Hi, today is Monday, March 13th, 2017. It's the first day of the third week of Lent, and this is a Swede Speaks. Although I suppose you could mistake me for being British right now. I mean, I got my British flag pillow all the time behind me, and I'm drinking tea, Earl Grey. I drink coffee every morning though, and right now I'm drinking lots of tea because, well, it's Lent, and I'm abstaining from soft drinks. I'm abstaining from orange juice. That's really the only kind of juice I drink. I'm abstaining from candy, from cookies, from biscuits, So this is the only sweet stuff I get. And maybe I forgot to plug in the microphone in my latest video because, yeah, you know, things aren't like I'm used to. But anyway, what I was thinking about, I guess this is more of a personal rant, but maybe some of you like that too. So we'll try that. This is a part of my series Being Conservative, but from a personal perspective. And I'm going to talk about name calling. First of all, you know, when I first started to get interested in politics in my youth, I actually sympathized with what I thought was the right. And this was early on, when I was 11 or 12 years old. And I think the reason for this, to be honest, was that my uncles on my father's side of the family, the part of my family that comes from Finland, although it has been living in Sweden since 1956, when my grandparents came to Sweden from Finland. My uncles were economists, and they were right-wing. At least they weren't very fond of the Social Democrats, and I guess I looked up to them somehow. So I would agree with what they were saying, even if maybe I didn't understand more than half of it. It didn't really matter. And that was my identity. That I grew up in a Social Democrat family, well, that wouldn't affect me. But then I moved when I was 14 years old to a place in Sweden, which was very working class, and well, it was not cool to be right wing there, to put it mildly. And I went with the crowd, and I tried being a social democrat. I tried being a socialist. But I was 15, 16 years old. I didn't really know what I was talking about. But even then, and this is like 25 years ago, almost, I will still try to investigate things. And I've always been a history buff, or at least since I was maybe 14 or 15 years old when I really turned into a history buff. So I would read all the history books they had in the library. Anyway, when I entered the upper levels of high school, would that be the proper translation? I think so. When I was 16 years old, this school was in the neighboring town. It was a military and church town, so people who lived there were more middle class. They were more they were more right wing. And I was back in my old environment, so to speak. But the kind of right wing that I joined, because I actually joined the youth organization of the Moderate Party around this time, when I was, I think, 17 or something, 16 or 17. I'm not really sure, somewhere around then. But the kind of right wing that I joined was, if I'm going to be nice to them, I'm going to call them libertarian or left libertarian. That means libertarian in economic issues and liberal in social issues. Like lifestyle issues and the like. So I guess I was a left libertarian, although I didn't know about the term back then. And I loved the EU, which was sort of ironic, but one thing about the EU is that in Sweden in these days, before Sweden joined and when Sweden was about to join, and there was this referendum, and I am happy the referendum was held when I was 17 and not 18, so I wasn't allowed to vote in it. That's good, because I would have voted yes, and then I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. I didn't get to vote, so it wasn't my fault. But anyway, the thing about this was the non-socialist parties in Sweden, they were usually still left liberal, more or less, and some of them had libertarian fractions, and I think the Christian Democrats back then had sort of conservative fractions too. But I digress. Anyway, because the socialist parties of Sweden back then, the Social Democrats especially, and also the Communist Party, they were very internationalist, but they didn't really care about Europe. Like Olof Palme, the icon of Sweden, the guy who all the Swedish Social Democrats look up to, and I could tell you the Norwegian Social Democrats look up to him too. And a lot of, and he is also popular among progressives around the world. At least he was. He didn't really care about Europe. He cared about the third world. He cared about Cuba, and he was speaking tough to the United States, but he didn't really care about Europe. So the non-socialist parties of Sweden, they cared about Europe, and somehow being pro-EU would be the same thing as being anti-Soviet, anti-socialism. So it was a mess. Anyway, and then I sort of turned into some kind of left libertarian, and I stayed this course more or less until I was 30 years old. When I was 30 years old, I went from atheism to Christianity. And what happened to me then was also that some of my political ideas changed. So I turned into some sort of Christian Democrat conservative. I was sort of skeptic towards Islam, but I think the rhetoric I would have used back then was maybe a little less harsh than the one I use now. And I had an experience with Christianity, and I had a faith that was really emotional, but it wasn't very factual. I mean, the problem was that I based my faith very much on my emotions and on experiences, and when things started to get difficult in my life, I left my faith, I left Christ, and also I left my political ideas from before, and I became a Marxist. I became an atheist Marxist, and I was the kind of atheist who really disliked Christianity. I mean, if someone asked me, I would say that I disliked Islam too, but then I would say something about how Christianity was the biggest problem in the West, and we should focus about that, and so on. I did dabble a little during the time, because I had a 4-year-long walk in an ideological and theological desert. I was still trying to figure out the truth. And I didn't find it anywhere. But I tried more or less everything. I tried being a Marxist. I tried being a social democrat twice. It didn't work out. I tried a little being more of a left liberal Christian. It didn't work very well either. And I looked into Buddhism. I looked into Sufism. I really did, actually. But it didn't work for me. It was nothing that... I couldn't find any truth anywhere. So around Easter, almost 4 years ago, 2013, I thought maybe I should look into Christianity again. And I started going to church. And also, because what had been happening the months before, I had turned into a very aggressive atheist, but then I just sort of gave up that. I think that was my last struggle before I accepted Christ. And I went from Marxism back to social democracy, but in this case, I think that social democracy was really just a middle station for me, because I was moving towards the right politically, and I was moving towards Christ theologically. And of course, you don't need to think that these things needs to be connected. But I would say that any Judeo-Christian conservative, or any Burkean conservative, or any conservative in the Western tradition, actually sort of needs to be a Christian. I mean, there are Jewish conservatives too, and they are good. I like them. Nothing about that. But at least there are Jewish anti-globalists, so that's for sure. Like Escher Levant, I think he's one of the good guys. But anyway, and yeah, it took me 10 minutes to get here, so I hope you're still listening, because now we're getting to what I thought I was going to talk about. But yeah, I think I'll have to figure out a good name for this video. Anyway, what happened was I became a Christian, a conservative Christian, mind you. Back then I turned into a conservative Lutheran. Now I more or less consider myself a conservatively minded Anglican, because I realized at some point that the sola scriptura, scripture alone of Lutheranism, is not really conservative. It's more radical. But yeah, anyway, I digress. Again, it's so easy to do this. But what happened was I became a Christian. I became politically, I became a conservative. I became very anti-Islam, and I became very critical of especially Sweden's migration policies. Norway had recently shifted government, and their migration policies were and are obviously better than Sweden's, although there are some problems in Norway too. Maybe I'll talk about that in some other video. But what happened was, when I came out as all these things, close relatives attacked me, and not physically, but verbally. And old friends attacked me. I was called all these different names. I was called a fascist, I was called a racist, I was called a Nazi, which I found sort of funny, because, well, yeah, I support the state of Israel. And I take a lot of heat because of that on this channel. Every time people drag up their anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, I tell them that you're wrong. And I get a lot of heat for that. And I was, of course, a misogynist, because I believed and believe in traditional gender roles. Yes, there are exceptions to the rules. There are no rules without exceptions. But in most cases, the gender roles in the Western world, the ones that, say, our grandparents or I think the ones that the great generation had, the people born in the 20s, they were pretty good, and they were not something that just was made up by someone with a sinister plan. They were the result of historic development and of nature, I'd say. But anyway, so I was called a lot of names, and this has been going on since then. I don't get as much of that anymore, because a lot of my old friends have stopped talking to me. And I have also started people who can't behave on social media. I block them. I pray for them, and I block them. And I pray also that I will be able to forgive them, and I hope I am. I'm praying for that, because I don't want any bitterness to take root in my heart, so I pray for that. But I also realize that these people are not people that I want in my life, and if I have them in my life, it's gonna lead to conflict. It's better if they are doing their thing at their place, I'm doing my thing at my place, and I pray for them that they will find Christ as their savior. That's all I can do for them. You notice I haven't mentioned names, anyone of these people, and I'm not going to, because that's impolite. I don't want to say any names. I'm just saying what happened. And what also happened was that the next year, or let's see, yeah, it was 3 years ago about that I became Christian conservative, Islamophobic, although I don't agree with that term, but then you know what I mean, and so on. 2 years ago, when Donald Trump declared that he was running for president, I immediately supported him. And first I actually did that out of a gut feeling. I realized that he was what I had been waiting for. Okay, I don't live in the United States, but what happens in the United States is important for the entire world, including Sweden, Norway, and so on. And I realized that he was what I had been waiting for. Someone who would take up the fight against Islam, someone who would take up the fight against political correctness, against identity politics. And then people started to tell me. First of all, they told me he doesn't stand a chance. He's not going to win the Republican nomination. And I said, we'll see. I think he wins. I think he is in line with American mentality as I understand it. And I only understood and understand American mentality by watching the United States from Europe, through media, through television, well, that's a part of the media, sorry, through personal contacts. But I've never been to the United States. I hope I'll go there one day. Maybe I'll go to Wisconsin. But that was how I understood Americans, that they would like this, at least enough to get him the nomination and to get him elected president. And when people realized that I actually believed he would win, and that I liked the fact that this was likely, okay, then they started telling me what he's a fascist, he's a Muslim basher, he's a Mexican basher, how can you support a racist like Trump, he's a misogynist, etc., etc., etc. And I told them, well, all of these names have been thrown at me. Now people are throwing them at Mr. Trump. Why should I listen to that? And I have yet to hear a good explanation on that. And yeah, on that, Donald Trump, as far as I know, never said all Muslims are bad. I am not saying that either. I am saying that Islam is the problem. A Muslim who leaves Islam is not a problem. And he never said all Mexicans are bad. But he said that the United States needs to take control of the situation, and it looks like that's what his government is doing now. That is very good. I am happy for that. He did say some things, you know what, that didn't sound very nice. Yeah, he did that. He did that, when was that? 2005, I think? In a private conversation. First of all, the way I view politics, it's not about electing an archbishop or a pope. It's about electing a politician with his or her flaws. We all have our flaws. Second, it is said that Donald Trump has become a Christian after that. I have no way of knowing whether this is true or not. Maybe that is just said to make the evangelicals vote for him, but I think most evangelicals were smarter than that. I think they voted for him because they didn't want Hillary Clinton to nominate liberal judges for the Supreme Court. I think that was one of the main reasons. But anyway, Donald Trump's faith is something between him and God. But he does say he's a Christian. He quotes the Bible. At least he did in his. At least he's done that in a few speeches, like on his inauguration and the speech he held about the budget recently. And he is surrounded by good Christian leaders, like his vice president. And that's really enough for me to support him. And I mean, Donald Trump was just one detail about my becoming a conservative, and the name calling thing that was sort of my point, that I don't care about name calling anymore. I investigate which policies does this candidate or this party stand for. What do I think about this? Is this somehow in line with what I think is a good society? And if someone calls this fascist or racist or misogynist, etc., etc., I don't care. You want to know one thing, liberals and left liberals and whatever you're called? When you use these words against opinions you don't agree with, or against people you don't agree with, it will not make us leave our positions. It will not make us join your movement. It just makes us more confident in standing up against this. I mean, we got Sylvi Listhaug here in Norway too. I've spoken about her before, and she is one of the good ones. Oh, you see, I like a woman. That much for misogynism. And I have defended Ben Carson in another video. Yeah, but I guess I'm a fascist anyway, or a racist, yeah. Heavy sarcasm if someone didn't get that. Anyway, that's what I have to say about this right now. I guess I could call this a little more of my story or something like that. We'll see. So, to anyone who's watched all this, thank you for watching. And I would like to thank the people who are supporting this channel through PayPal and through Patreon, and also through prayers, which I consider very important. And if you like this channel, please subscribe so you don't miss anything. Please share my videos. Please like my videos if you like them. If you got something to say, feel free to comment. I read all comments and I reply to as many as I can until they get completely unreasonable. At some point I stop responding, but as long as they're reasonable, or at least as long as I find it entertaining, I will respond. Anyway, this is A Swede Speaks. Have a nice day.